Hey, what's up guys, Will here for GSM Arena. Xiaomi's Redmi Note 10 Pro is a very popular and affordable mid-ranger, but this is the cheaper version, the regular Redmi Note 10. Do you still get the important features here, and which ones do you miss out on? Let's find out in our full review. Before we get started, our review is of the 4G version of the Redmi Note 10. The 5G one has a more powerful chipset, but also some downgrades and other features to balance that out. Yeah, it's kinda confusing. The Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 brings a very similar looking design to the Redmi Note 10 Pro, with a glossy back curved at the edges, and that snazzy looking camera arrangement. The Note 10 is a bit smaller and feels lighter in the hand though, and its back is made from plastic, not Gorilla Glass. But even though it is a bit less premium, the Redmi Note 10 still brings IP53 dust and splash resistance, which isn't so common at this price. On the front is a 6.43-inch AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution and Gorilla Glass 3 protection. Unlike the Pro, you get just a standard refresh rate here. However, this screen is quite nice. You get good sharpness and the blacks are quite deep, something typical of OLED panels. Colors look nice and can be quite accurate depending on your color setting. And max brightness is decent too. We measured 475 nits with the slider and a boost up to around 680 nits in auto mode when in bright conditions. For audio, the Redmi Note 10 brings a pair of stereo speakers, which are well balanced. The top one is just as loud as the bottom. They're not quite as loud as the speakers on the Pro version, but still scored good on our charts. You can plug in headphones through the 3.5mm jack too, and there's support for FM radio with them plugged in. Another popular feature you'll find on the Redmi Note 10 is expandable storage through a dedicated slot, on top of the 64 or 128 gigs on board. But something you won't get here is NFC support, which the Pro version and many competitors do provide. The interface of the Redmi Note 10 is Xiaomi's MIUI 12 on top of Android 11. We've seen MIUI 12 on many devices since it debuted last year, and it generally remains the same UI, regardless of Android version. Some of its key features include the option to keep your apps in an app drawer or on the home screen. And you can opt to split the standard notification shade into a panel just for notifications and one for the quick toggle options called the control panel. Since the screen is an OLED, there is support for an always-on display to show you time and notifications. It's quite customizable. And waking up and unlocking the Redmi Note 10 can be done with the side-mounted fingerprint reader / power button. It's well placed and very fast and reliable. At the heart of the Redmi Note 10 is a Snapdragon 678 chipset, built on an 11nm process. It's just like the Snapdragon 675 we've seen in other mid-rangers, but with a slightly higher CPU clock speed. Performance-wise, it's a bit better too, but still on the lower end of the charts as far as benchmark scores go. This chipset is just not as powerful as the Snapdragon 700 series ones we see in many competitors. Performance is still decent, but can feel on the slow side at times. Powering the device is a large 5000 mAh battery, and battery life is great here, but not very competitive. The Redmi Note 10 was able to score an endurance rating of 110 hours in our proprietary tests. But on top of that, charging speed is quite fast, among the fastest in this class. The bundled 33-watt charger took this big battery from 0 to 65% in half an hour. There are 4 cameras on the back of the Redmi Note 10, a 48-megapixel quad-Bayer main cam with phase detection autofocus, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle cam, a 2-megapixel macro camera, and a depth sensor. In good light, 12-megapixel shots from the main camera are very sharp and detailed for the class, with impressive dynamic range and true-to-life colors. The Note 10 Pro is quite proficient when it comes to taking portrait photos. Edge detection is really good and the bokeh effect looks convincing, plus you get a nice level of detail and natural looking skin tones. The ultra-wide camera is competitive for this price range. Its photos are a bit softer than the main cams, but the color reproduction is the same. Plus the distortion correction does a great job. Close-up photos taken with the macro camera are just okay. There's no autofocus here like on last year's model, so getting a sharp photo takes some trial and error. And while the colors look nice, you don't get a ton of detail at the 2-megapixel resolution. At night, photos from the main cam have mostly good contrast and colors, and the HDR does a decent job bringing out detail from the shadows, but the overall fine details are wiped out by the heavy noise suppression. If you turn on night mode, you get more balanced shadows and highlights, and the fine detail is restored. It's a heavily processed look, but everything looks more clear, and the processing time is just about as fast as the main photo mode. Low-light photos from the ultra-wide camera are soft and noisy and have narrow dynamic range, and there's no support for night mode on this camera either. Selfies are taken with a 13-megapixel front-facing camera, and these look good. The subject's face comes out well exposed regardless of background, and there's a decent amount of fine detail. Videos can be recorded with the main camera up to 4K resolution at 30 FPS, but stabilization is only supported in 1080p. 4K video has good contrast and low noise, but the colors are a bit bland, and dynamic range is narrow with clipped highlights. The ultra-wide camera records video in 1080p, and colors look more lively here. There is some noise and softness though, and the dynamic range is again lacking. So that's the Redmi Note 10. You get a nice looking and water resistant design with a bright OLED screen, excellent battery life with fast charging, stereo speakers, and some decent camera performance. Compared to the Pro model, you miss out on having a high screen refresh rate, a more powerful chipset, and that nice high-res camera, but you do save a considerable amount, and the overall package is still solid and great value for the money. So if you're on a budget, the Redmi Note 10 is definitely worth recommending. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.